Hello there. My name is Brandy, and I'm a career facilitator here at Goodwill Columbus in the Workforce Development Department. Today, we have a special panel discussion for you. We are going to talk about diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Before we get started, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow to our Facebook page, YouTube page, and LinkedIn. Without further ado, let me introduce our special guest. The first guest we have is someone near and dear to my heart. It is my mother, but I am going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Natalie Burley, and I am a economic development professional in minority business development. Thank you for having me, Brandy.
You're welcome, Mom. And our next guest is Elizabeth, and she is one of our career boot camp participants. So, Elizabeth, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Elizabeth Johnson Gravely, and I'm from our local area here. I have a career in both customer service as well as the healthcare industry, but both of those services is in the service industry, providing service as well as care to the consumers.
Excellent. So I thought it was important to bring both of you guys on today because we're getting the perspective of someone who is on the consumer side of things and employee side of things. So retail, customer service, healthcare. And then we're also getting your perspective, Natalie, which would be the managerial side of things and the business to business side of things. So, my first question for the both of you guys would be, do you consider diversity and inclusion at work important? And if so, what does that mean to you? Let's start with Natalie.
Yes, I do consider it important. One of the things that we do in our minority business development division is work with minority businesses um, to assist them to grow and expand and um, hire employees. And one of the things we have found is that when minority businesses grow, they hire minority employees. And so it provides an opportunity to bring diversity uh, into the community at large. So I do believe it's very important.
Wow. I think that's a good point that it provides jobs for those people who may have been underrepresented, excuse me. How about you, Elizabeth? Do you consider diversity and inclusion at work important?
Oh, I most definitely do. It's important as an employee not only to see people who look like me, but also people who don't look like me. To see your world as a mosaic or colored outside of the lines, as opposed to everyone just looking the same and being, androgynous or just being like robots where we're all looking the same, all talking the same, all doing the same, and in a world that is so different, and respecting the differences about each other.
I would agree with that. You know, you want to make sure that your workplace is diverse because that allows a diverse set of thoughts in the workplace, which breeds innovation, in my opinion. So, this is a question for both of you guys. Do you feel like you're an advocate for diversity and inclusion in your workplace? And if so, how? And then for you, Natalie, how do you encourage diverse partnerships in a business to business setting? So let's start with Elizabeth here. Do you feel like you're an advocate for diversity in the workplace?
Oh, I definitely do. Many times I've asked questions of my co-workers, to just to help me understand so that I can have a better knowledge base. I wouldn't want to do something that they perceived as being disrespectful, though within my heart I did not feel that I was disrespecting them. I want to understand. I want to be able to share that information with another co-worker that may not understand why they dress that way, why they speak that way, or for example, with some cultures, you don't look them directly into the eye, where in other cultures, you are expected to look someone directly in the eye. So I want to make sure that I understand that so that I am respecting what they want. I'm sorry. I apologize for
No,
the
it's okay. Working from home. And so, um, Natalie, do you feel like you're an advocate for diversity and inclusion in your workplace? And then on the business side, how do you encourage those diverse partnerships?
I think I am an advocate for diversity and inclusion in the workplace because of what we do, because of the assistance that we provide, because we are constantly pushing to make sure that minority businesses are included in not just the lending arena, but the procurement arena as well. So, um, from a business to business perspective, one of the ways that we do encourage and facilitate assisting minority businesses is we provide incentives to financial institutions to lend to minority owned businesses. We do that by um, providing them with extra collateral on loans that they make to minority owned businesses.
Mhm.
So, in that way, we're pushing to um, encourage lenders to lend and giving them a bit of a cushion and a comfort level to make certain loans to minority owned businesses. So, yes, I do believe I am advocating on behalf of a diverse minority community.
I appreciate you guys speaking up and making sure you are advocating because not everyone is able to do that. And I think it's important to lend a voice to the voiceless. So, do you feel like it is your place to make sure your colleagues understand the importance of diversity and inclusion? Why or why not? I know for me, sometimes I get to a place where I'm like, if they don't got it by now, they don't got it, like, but you can't think like that. So, well, I feel like you can't think like that. So do you guys feel like it's your place to make sure your colleagues understand diversity and inclusion or no?
I think so, especially being both a consumer as well as an employee. I think it starts with me. I think it would start with it with all of us, but I look at it to for them to see how I am, how I treat that person, how I'm willing to reach out and find out more about that the diversity and willing to share information. It's like what is it? That each one teach one. That if you have an example, sometimes people just need an example. She bows when she greets this person, and then vicariously they'll do it as well, that, and then maybe they'll come ask me, well, why did you do that? So that would be my opportunity there to elevate, to impart knowledge. That's how I look at it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I think, you know, uh, like I mentioned before, sharing and informing my colleagues of the um, benefit of working with minority-owned businesses to help them grow. Um, I think that is allowing me to share with them the diversity that we have in our in our communities, and by allowing them to be able to see that there are businesses out there that can perform as well as any other business, whether they are a minority or not. There's some great businesses that out there that are doing some wonderful things. So I think by sharing that with my colleagues, it allows them to go out and if they run across any businesses, they are able to say, yeah, well, we've got services that can help you as well. So I think it is very important for them to be aware of what we do.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. It's just about like not being discouraged to do so and share that information. Um, so, over the span of you guys' careers, have you experienced barriers in the workplace, past or present, that was a result of your workplace not being diverse enough or inclusive enough? And do you feel like those barriers affected your career trajectory? And we can start with Natalie.
Um, well, I've been working for a long time. Yeah, maybe, and this is just my experience, maybe um, a few years back that I found that there were some barriers as it related to being a woman.
Mhm.
Um, some of it may have been related to being African American. Um, but I do believe that there were some barriers. Um, I'm not necessarily uh, I can't say that what I'm doing in the businesses that I work with, I'm quite sure that they have experienced some barriers, certainly on the lending side.
Mhm.
Obtaining credit. I know that they have experienced barriers. Has it affected my career trajectory? Um, uh, to a certain extent, I think it did. Um, I think it did to a certain degree.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Thank you for sharing and thank you for that um, honest answer. And I think it's a testament of how well you do your work because here you are still, an economic financial manager. So for the company you work for, and you're still able to help out those other small businesses that may have barriers as well. So, Elizabeth, do you think you've experienced those barriers in your workplaces? And do you feel like it affected your career trajectory?
Yes, to a certain degree. I first entered the workforce in the 60s, in the middle 60s. So there were a lot of changes going on, but there was still a lot of changes that were still in place, or a lot of things that were in place were barriers that were in
Mhm.
place that didn't allow you to advance. Uh, a particular employer that I had or job that I had in my early or late teens was, if I sounded a certain way on the phone, that got me the
Mhm.
interview. If I continued to sound like that, and the term that they used was generic, I could continue to keep my employment.
Mhm.
And I just got weary of trying to not be me every day, that I was trying to sound and be like someone that I wasn't. And then
Mhm.
later on in my nursing career, there were barriers if you were a single parent. There was a barrier if you didn't hit, if you went overweight by 5 pounds. There were just
Mhm.
all kinds of barriers in nursing, And then as things began to change through the 70s and through the 80s, There were different barriers, but they were still barriers. They were more subtle as opposed to the ones that were more in your face, I'd say in the 60s and 70s. But even as of today, there are people now feel that I don't want to say people, I don't want to use that term, but there are some groups of people that feel that it's okay to be in your face with barriers and call you on the phone and say things to you on the phone because they feel emboldened to do those things. So the barriers are still there, but maybe less so in some areas, but more so in others.
Mhm.
But I refuse to let them stop me.
Right.
Yes. I love
Right.
that. And I think it's interesting. I think some of the barriers you mentioned are interesting because I remember when I was working in customer service, one of the notes one of my past managers had on me was my tone of voice, right? You have to change your tone, Brandy. You don't sound as perky. And it's like, well, what does perky sound like? And I'm listening to someone who's next to me who sounds extremely dull. And you guys hear me, I don't sound dull at all.
No.
I'm I wonder what's different about her where I'm being addressed for my tones. I just think that it's interesting how a lot of things have changed, but a lot of things still kind of remain the same. But I
Yes.
think what's important is still pushing through
Hmm.
um, and trying to get past those barriers as much as possible. So, with that being said, oh, yes.
And there are subtle barriers like pay inequity.
Mm,
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
You might not find barriers with regard to, people saying, racist things or anything like that, but it can come in the form of pay inequity.
wow. So when you say pay inequity, do you mean maybe your coworker is getting paid at a certain rate, or do you
Right.
mean, um, you were starting off at a lower rate because of the barriers, and you're trying to work your way up through
I
your
think it can.
career?
I think it can be both.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I think it can be both. I think you can. You may be hired on, and you might be hired on at the same time as a male, and find out his hourly rate is just a little bit more than yours because you know he negotiated it, or um, someone may have decided that his rate is where it should be because he's a male.
Uh-huh.
So
That's true.
um, it can come in subtle forms like that, but it is still a barrier.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you mentioned that
Yeah.
because that was not in the forefront of my mind, but it makes total sense. And so, with that being said, and this will be our final question, what advice would you give job seekers or business owners who are looking for a diverse place to work or partner with? And let's start with Elizabeth.
I would say the advice that I would give the job seeker is to just take a look around, look at that employer and see what his position is on diversity and inclusion, and then the statement might look good, but take a look at the employer and see what it looks like.
Uh huh.
Yeah, because they may say one thing, but you may see something totally different. And don't be afraid to do your homework.
Right.
Just like employers do in homework on job seekers. As a job seeker, you also need to do your homework about that employer. That would be
Great.
my advice.
Yeah, yeah. I would say I would agree, and I would say so. For instance, uh, Business First just came out with their list of companies here in Central Ohio that have made their you know, top employer, top diversity list. So, look at things like that. If I'm whether you're a job seeker or a business owner, certainly if a company is working well and trying to be diverse and inclusive with their employees and employment, they will probably be so with their procurement and their supplier diversity. So I would say look at resources like that for businesses to also look at organizations that that work with major companies and minority-owned businesses, organizations such as the Minority Supplier Development Council and chambers of commerce, and things like that, where you'll be able to network.
Mhm.
So that's what I would suggest.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me today and having this conversation. This has to be one of my favorite panel videos I've done thus far. So thank you so much for joining me. And I think that our viewers will have a lot to take away from this discussion. And for our viewers out there, if you have any questions about any of the topics we discussed today, don't forget to contact us, and you'll see our number below. And then don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to our Facebook page, YouTube page, and LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.